The first time I saw guns pointed at me, I was only trying to drive home in a car my late aunt gave me. Then the officer said it had been reported stolen, by my own sister, by nightfall. My job was on the line. My name was in a police file, and a trust I'd never seen was suddenly hers. If I couldn't prove who forged my signature, I'd lose everything. The charcoal sedan smelled like peppermint and old leather, a scent that belonged entirely to my Aunt Nadine, even though she had been gone for 3 weeks. Driving her car felt like holding her hand. I kept the speedometer exactly at the limit, 55 miles per hour, watching the dry, brown landscape of Briar Glen, Colorado, roll past the window. It was late afternoon, and the sun dipped low over the Rockies, casting long, bruised shadows across the asphalt. I was 33 years old, and for the first time in 2 years, I felt something resembling stability. The executor of the estate had handed me the keys 2 days ago. He had told me to use the car while we sorted out the house. It was a simple kindness, or so I thought. I had a job interview the next morning in Denver, and this car was my lifeline. It was the difference between moving forward and staying stuck in the mud of grief and financial panic. Then the lights flashed in my rearview mirror. My stomach dropped, but only in the way it does for anyone seeing a patrol car. I checked my speed again. I was perfectly legal. I signaled, slowed down, and pulled onto the gravel shoulder, kicking up a cloud of dust that drifted across the windshield. I put the car in park and took a breath. I reached for my purse on the passenger seat to get my license. "Driver, put your hands out of the window, now!" The voice was amplified, harsh, and distorted by a loudspeaker. It did not sound like a traffic stop. It sounded like war. I froze. My hand hovered over the purse. "Driver, hands visible. Do it now!" I looked into the side mirror. My heart hammered against my ribs so hard I could feel it in my throat. There was not just one patrol car. There were 2 SUVs parked at angles behind me, blocking the lane. Doors were open. I saw the silhouette of a man crouched behind the open door of the lead vehicle. He was pointing a gun at me. Panic is a cold thing. It does not feel like fire. It feels like ice water flooding your lungs. I slowly lifted my hands, trembling, and pushed them out the open window. The air outside was cool, but sweat pricked at my hairline. With your left hand, open the door from the outside. Step out slowly. Keep your hands in the air. I fumbled for the handle. The door creaked open. I stepped out onto the uneven gravel, my legs feeling like they were made of water. I was wearing my good slacks and a silk blouse, dressed for the life I was trying to build. Not for this. Walk backwards toward my voice. Do not turn around. I shuffled backward, my heels caught in the dirt. I could hear the crunch of boots approaching, but I was terrified to look. The gun was still trained on me. I could feel the weight of it, the intention of it. One wrong move, one twitch, and my life would end here on the side of a rural highway. A mistake in the paperwork of the universe. Get on your knees. Cross your ankles. Hands on your head. I dropped to my knees. The gravel bit sharp and hard into my skin through the fabric of my pants. I laced my fingers behind my head, squeezing my eyes shut to stop the tears from spilling over. "Please," I whispered, though I knew they could not hear me. "I have the papers. I have the papers." Rough hands grabbed my wrists. They wrenched my arms down behind my back. I gasped as the metal cuffs clicked tight, pinching the delicate skin of my wrists. They were heavy and smelled of iron and sanitizer. "You are under arrest for grand theft auto and possession of a stolen vehicle." The words made no sense. They floated in the air like smoke. "No," I choked out. My cheek pressed against the side of the police car where they had pushed me. "It is not stolen. It is my aunt's car. I have the letter. It is in the glove box. Please check the glove box. Stop moving." The officer barked. He patted me down, his hands impersonal and firm, checking for weapons. I felt violated, stripped of my humanity. I was no longer Lila Coleman, niece, sister, grieving woman. I was a suspect. I was a threat. "Officer, please," I said, my voice rising in pitch. "My name is Lila Coleman. The owner was Nadine Coleman. She died. I am the executor's contact. The papers are right there." The officer spun me around. He was young, with a buzz cut and eyes that looked tired and angry. He looked at me, really looked at me, and paused. Maybe he saw the terror in my eyes. Maybe he saw that I did not look like a car thief. "Stay here," he said to his partner. "Watch her." I stood there, cuffed, leaning against the cold metal of the SUV, while he walked to the charcoal sedan. He spent a long time inside. I watched him sift through the glove box. I saw him pull out the thick manila envelope the executor, Mr. Pellman, had given me. He read the letter. He checked the registration. He got on his radio. The static of the radio was the only sound on the highway. I watched the sun slip lower. I wondered if anyone I knew was driving past. I wondered if this was how I would be remembered in Briar Glen. The woman in handcuffs, the criminal. The officer walked back. He did not uncuff me immediately. He held the envelope. "The vehicle has been reported stolen." "Ma'am," he said, his tone less aggressive but still guarded. "The report was filed this morning. The owner of record is the estate of Nadine Coleman. The reporting party claims you took the keys without authorization and fled." "That is a lie," I said, the anger finally piercing through the fear. "Who reported it?" He hesitated. "We have to take you in. We can sort out the paperwork at the station. If this letter is real, you will be released. But the plate is in the system. I cannot unring that bell on the side of the road." "Who reported it?" I asked again, though a sick, heavy feeling was already settling in my stomach. I knew before he said it, the report was filed by Amara Coleman. My sister. The ride to the station was silent. I sat in the back of the patrol car. The hard plastic seat digging into my spine, the cage between me and the officers was a mesh of steel diamonds. I looked through them and watched the town of Briar Glen approach. It was a small place, the kind of town where everyone knew your grandfather's name and your business before you did. Mara had done this. I closed my eyes and saw her face. Mara, with her perfect blonde bob and her soft, wounded voice. Mara, who had cried at the funeral so loudly that people had to comfort her, while I stood stoic and silent, holding Aunt Nadine's cold hand in my memory. Mara, who had asked me just yesterday if I was sure I was okay to drive, if I was sure I was stable. Stable. We arrived at the station. It was a brick building that smelled of floor wax and stale coffee. They took the cuffs off at the booking desk, and I rubbed my wrists. Watching the red marks bloom on my skin, the humiliation was a physical weight, pressing down on my shoulders. I felt dirty. I felt small. "I need to see the report," I said to the sergeant at the desk. I was not shouting. I was concentrating on keeping my voice from shaking. "I have a letter from the estate attorney authorizing me to have this car." My sister filed a false report. The sergeant looked at the paperwork the arresting officer had brought in. He frowned. He picked up the phone and made a call. I waited on a wooden bench, staring at a poster about seatbelt safety. 10 minutes passed. 20. Finally, the sergeant called me over. "Ms. Coleman, we have spoken to Mr. Pellman's office. He confirmed he drafted a letter, but he also stated there is some confusion regarding the current custody of the assets." "Confusion?" I asked. "I have the letter." The sergeant slid a piece of paper across the counter. "However, the stolen vehicle report stands until withdrawn. Your sister indicated you took the car while—" He squinted at the screen, reading. "While in the midst of a mental health spiral, and that she feared for your safety and the safety of others." A mental health spiral. I gripped the edge of the counter. It was precise. It was calculated. If she had just said I stole it, I could prove I did not. But by claiming I was unstable, she made the letter from the lawyer look like a mistake, something given to a woman who had since lost her mind. She was not just attacking my legal standing, she was attacking my sanity. "Am I being charged?" I asked. "Not at this moment," the sergeant said. "But the car stays here. It is disputed property. You are free to go. But we will be forwarding a report to the district attorney to see if charges are warranted for unauthorized use. I need my phone." I said, He handed me my belongings in a plastic bag. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely undo the knot. I walked out of the station into the cooling evening air. I stood on the sidewalk, the streetlights just beginning to hum to life. I dialed Mara. She answered on the second ring. "Lila?" Her voice was breathless, sweet, concerned. "Oh, thank God. Are you okay?" "The police called and said they found you." I was so worried. The sound of her concern made bile rise in my throat. "Stop it," I said. "Lila, honey, you sound upset. I am standing outside the police station." "Mara, I was handcuffed on the side of the highway. They had guns drawn on me." There was a pause, a long, heavy silence. When she spoke again, the sweetness was gone. It had evaporated like water on a hot skillet, leaving something hard and dry underneath. "You should not have taken the car." "Lila, I have the letter from Pellman." I snapped. "You know I do. You were there when he gave it to me. Pellman is just trying to be nice because he feels sorry for you," Mara said. Her voice was lower now, devoid of the performance she put on for the world. "But that car is an estate asset, and you are not in a position to be handling assets. Look at you. You are unstable." "I am not unstable," I almost shouted, then caught myself. I looked around to see if anyone was watching. This is what she wanted. She wanted me to scream. She wanted me to break. "You have no job. Lila. You have no husband. You have nothing. Aunt Nadine tried to help you, but we both know you just drain people. I did what I had to do. I had to protect the estate. You reported it stolen." I said. "You told them I was having a breakdown. And look at where you are," she said. "You almost got shot because you would not listen." "I did not listen? You never told me to bring it back. If you want this to go away," Mara said, her voice dropping to a whisper that sounded like a snake sliding through dry grass, "then stop sniffing around the estate. Stop asking Pellman for copies of things. Stop going to the house. Just let me handle it. I am the responsible one. I always have been." I gripped the phone until my knuckles turned white. "You are trying to steal it," I said. "You are trying to take everything. I am trying to protect our inheritance from a sister who cannot even keep a plant alive." Mara said, "Go home, Lila. Take a cab, and do not go near the house again. If you do, I will file a restraining order, and with the police report from today on your record, guess who the judge will believe?" The line went dead. I stared at the phone. I felt a scream building in my chest, a primal, jagged thing that wanted to tear its way out. I wanted to throw the phone through the window of the police station. I wanted to drive to Mara's house and shake her until the truth fell out, but I did not. I stood there, breathing in the exhaust fumes of a passing bus. I forced my heart to slow down. I forced my hands to uncurl. Mara expected me to explode. She was counting on it. She had painted a picture of a hysterical, unstable woman, and she was waiting for me to step into the frame. I would not give her the satisfaction. I called a taxi. The ride to my apartment cost me $60, money I did not have to spare. When I got home, I did not turn on the lights. I sat in the dark on my second-hand sofa and watched the headlights of passing cars sweep across my ceiling. I was in trouble, real trouble. The police report was a stain. Even if they never charged me, it was there. Background checks for jobs, housing applications. It would all be flagged. Unauthorized use of vehicle. Mental instability. Mara had not just taken the car. She had taken my reputation. She had fired a warning shot that was meant to cripple me. I needed to understand why. Mara was greedy. Yes, she had always been jealous of the bond I had with Aunt Nadine. But this was extreme. Calling the police, risking my life with an armed stop. That was desperate. You do not burn down a house just to kill a spider unless you are terrified of the spider. What was she afraid of? I got up and went to the kitchen table. I had a box of papers there, copies of the initial estate documents Mr. Pellman had given me before things turned sour. I turned on the small desk lamp. The light was yellow and dim. I pulled out the copy of Aunt Nadine's will. I had read it before, but mostly through a veil of tears. skimming for the sentimental parts. Now, I read it like a detective. I read it like an enemy. It was standard boilerplate for the first 5 pages: bequests to charity, the house to be sold and split, the jewelry to be divided. Then I saw it. It was near the end, in a section regarding residual assets. Article 7. The distribution of liquid assets held in the Nadine Coleman Revocable Trust shall be administered in accordance with the separate trust agreement held by Hallowell Fiduciary Group. I stopped. Hallowell Fiduciary Group. I had never heard Aunt Nadine mention them. She used a local bank in Briar Glen for her checking account. She used Mr. Pellman for her legal work. Who was Hallowell? I scanned the rest of the paragraph. In the event of my death, the acting trustee shall be responsible for immediate disbursement according to the schedule attached hereto as Exhibit B. I flipped to the back of the packet. There was no Exhibit B. There was, however, a summary page. Mr. Pellman had prepared for us. It listed the assets. It listed the estimated value of the house, and under Trust Management, it listed a name, Mara Coleman, Temporary Administrator. I stared at the paper. Why would Mara be the administrator? Aunt Nadine had always said I was the one with the head for details. Even if my life had hit a rough patch recently, Mara was impulsive. Mara bought things she could not afford to impress people she did not like. And the name Hallowell Fiduciary Group was nowhere on Pellman's summary. He had listed the assets as being held in a general estate account under his firm's supervision, with Mara as the point person. The discrepancy was small: a missing attachment, a different name managing the money. But in the silence of my apartment, with the phantom sensation of handcuffs still on my wrists, it felt like a siren. Mara had tried to scare me off. She had threatened me to stop sniffing around. She was not protecting the estate from my instability. She was hiding something. I looked at the date on the will copy. It was signed 3 years ago. I looked at the summary sheet Pellman had given us. It was dated last week. My Aunt Nadine was a meticulous woman. She labeled her spices. She kept her receipts in chronological order. She would not create a trust with a specific firm like Hallowell and then leave the administration to Mara without a very specific reason. Unless Mara had inserted herself, I felt a cold clarity wash over me. It replaced the fear. It replaced the humiliation. Mara thought she had won today. She thought that by sending the police, she had cowed me into submission. She thought I would crawl into a hole and let her take whatever she wanted just to avoid more trouble. She was wrong. I was not going to call her back and scream. I was not going to beg Mr. Pellman for the car. I was going to find out what was in the files of the Hallowell Fiduciary Group. I went to my laptop and opened a browser. I typed in the name. They were not in Briar Glen. They were a boutique firm, specializing in high-value family trusts. I looked at the clock. It was nearly midnight. I could not react emotionally anymore. Emotions got you handcuffed on the side of the road. Emotions got you labeled as unstable. I had to be cold. I had to be stone. I pulled a fresh notepad from my drawer. I wrote down 3 things. 1. Get a copy of the police report and body cam footage. 2. Find the contact information for Hallowell Fiduciary Group. 3. Do not let Mara know I'm still fighting. I touched my wrist. The skin was tender where the metal had bitten in. I remembered the officer's gun. I remembered the feeling of total powerlessness. I would never feel that way again. My sister wanted a war. She had started it with flashing lights and loaded weapons. She had no idea that she had just given me the one thing I had been missing for years: a purpose. I turned off the lamp and sat in the dark, plotting my next move. The tears were gone. All that was left was the work. The drive to Cedarvale took 45 minutes, winding through the foothills where the scrub brush of Briar Glen gave way to the manicured pines and aspen groves of the moneyed class. I drove a rental car, a compact white box that smelled of industrial lemon cleaner, because my aunt's charcoal sedan, my sedan, I corrected myself, was still impounded in a police lot, a hostage to my sister's malice. Every time a car came up behind me, I checked the rearview mirror. My heart would kick against my ribs. A phantom echo of the flashing lights from yesterday. I was 33 years old, a woman who had paid her taxes and never so much as jaywalked. Yet I felt like a fugitive. The sensation of the handcuffs was still there, a ghost pressure around my wrists, reminding me how quickly the world could tilt on its axis. Cedarvale was the kind of town where the streets were paved with seamless asphalt, and the storefronts displayed artisan bread and bespoke fly fishing gear. Pelman Rusk Legal occupied a renovated Victorian mansion on the main square. Its brick facade scrubbed to a warm, inviting red. It looked less like a law firm and more like a place where you would go to have tea and discuss charitable giving. I parked the rental and sat for a moment, gripping the steering wheel. My reflection in the mirror looked tired. There were dark circles under my eyes that no amount of concealer could hide. I looked like exactly what Mara had told the police I was, a woman on the edge. I took a deep breath, smoothed my blazer, and forced myself to step out. The interior of the law firm smelled of beeswax and old paper. The receptionist, a woman with silver hair and a smile that did not reach her eyes, buzzed me in. I was 5 minutes early, but Grant Pelman was ready for me. Grant was a man who seemed to be constructed entirely of beige tones. Beige suit, sandy hair, skin tanned to a soft biscuit color. He stood up from behind a desk that was large enough to land a small aircraft on, extending a hand that was dry and warm. "Lila," he said. His voice was a rich baritone, practiced and soothing. "I was so sorry to hear about the unpleasantness yesterday. Please, sit down." He gestured to a leather wingback chair. I sat, keeping my back straight. I did not want to sink in. I did not want to look small. It was more than unpleasant. "Grant," I said, "it was terrifying. I was arrested at gunpoint because you did not file the transfer paperwork correctly." Grant sighed, a sound of heavy paternal patience. He sat back, tenting his fingers. "Now, Lila, let us not jump to conclusions. The paperwork was in order on our end, but estate settlements are complex. Communication delays happen, and quite frankly, when family dynamics are volatile, things can get messy." He let the word volatile hang in the air. "My sister reported the car stolen," I said. "She told them I was mentally unstable." Grant nodded slowly, his expression full of a practiced sympathy that made my skin crawl. "Mara is very concerned about you, Lila. She called me this morning in quite a state. She feels terrible about the misunderstanding, of course, but she mentioned that you have been under a great deal of strain since Nadine passed. Grief affects us all differently." I stared at him. The shift was subtle, but it was there. Yesterday, I was the niece picking up a car. Today, I was the unstable liability. I am not under strain. Grant, I am grieving. Yes, but I am perfectly capable, and I am here because I want to see the attachment to the will. The trust document, Exhibit B. Grant's smile tightened just a fraction. He reached for a file on his desk and opened it. He shuffled a few papers, looking busy but accomplishing nothing. "Ah, yes, the Hallowell Trust. As I mentioned on the phone, that particular schedule is currently being located." "Located?" I asked. "It is a legal document. It should be stapled to the will. It is a separate instrument," Grant corrected gently, "and because it involves assets held by a third-party fiduciary. The integration of their records with our files is taking a moment. It is nothing to worry about. Just administrative housekeeping." He closed the file and folded his hands on top of it. "However, given the incident with the police and the obvious friction between you and Mara, I have drawn up a proposal that I think will help smooth the waters." He slid a single sheet of paper across the mahogany expanse. "What is this?" I asked. Not touching it. "It is a temporary authorization." Grant said, "It appoints Mara as the interim manager of the estate's physical and liquid assets, just for the next 90 days. It allows her to consolidate the accounts, deal with the house maintenance, and handle the car situation without further confusion." I read the text upside down. "Authorization of sole management. Power of attorney for estate matters. If you sign this," Grant continued, his voice dropping to a confidential whisper, "Mara has agreed to immediately withdraw the police report. The stolen vehicle charge vanishes. The record is scrubbed, You can go back to Denver. Take some time for yourself, and let us handle the heavy lifting here. We just want to protect you. Lila, we want to prevent any more episodes. The room went very quiet. The ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner sounded like a hammer hitting an anvil. He was bribing me. No, he was brokering a bribe. If I sign this, I said, slowly, so I would not scream, I am effectively handing Mara control of everything, including the trust you cannot seem to find. It is just temporary, Grant said, to prevent disruption. Look, Lila, let us be honest. A police record for grand theft auto? That is going to make it very hard for you to find employment. It is going to complicate your life significantly. Mara is offering you a grace period. She wants to help. My instincts, usually quiet and polite, were screaming. They were screaming that this man was not my aunt's lawyer anymore. He was a shark in a beige suit. I stood up. My knees were shaking. But I locked them. I am not signing that. Grant, Lila, be reasonable. I want the release letter for the car. The one the police said was insufficient. I want a certified copy of it, stating clearly that I had permission to drive that vehicle. Grant looked at me. His eyes were hard now, the sympathy evaporating. I can give you a copy of the original letter, he said. His tone clipped. But I cannot force the police to drop the investigation if the reporting party maintains the vehicle was taken without consent. Give me the letter. I said, and I want all communication from this firm in writing from now on. No more phone calls. No more quiet chats. If you have something to say to me, email it or mail it. He stared at me for a long moment, then opened his drawer and pulled out a photocopy. He slid it across the desk without looking at me. You are making this much harder than it needs to be. Lila, Nadine would not have wanted you fighting like this. I took the paper. Nadine would not have wanted her niece held at gunpoint. I said, I turned and walked out. I could feel his eyes boring into my back, assessing me, calculating just how much of a problem I was going to be. I made it to the lobby before my legs gave out. I had to lean against the heavy oak reception desk to catch my breath. My heart was racing. I had stood up to him, but I felt nauseous. The threat was clear. Sign over your inheritance, or we will let the criminal charges ruin you. I adjusted my purse on my shoulder and turned toward the heavy glass doors. That was when I saw her. Mara was sitting in one of the plush velvet chairs in the waiting area, legs crossed at the ankle. She was wearing a cream-colored cashmere sweater and dark jeans that looked like they cost more than my rent. Her blonde hair was a perfect, smooth helmet of shine. She was scrolling on her phone, looking bored. She looked up as I approached. Her face shifted instantly into a mask of tragic concern. Lila, she said softly. She stood up, reaching out as if to hug me. I took a step back. Do not touch me, I said. Mara's hand dropped. She looked around the empty lobby, checking to see if the receptionist was watching. Then she stepped closer, her voice low. I saw the rental car outside. She said, a Nissan? Really? I looked at her. Her eyes were sharp, scanning my face for cracks. You filed a false police report. Mara, you could go to jail for that. And you could go to jail for stealing a car, she countered, her voice breezy. Or at least, you will have a record that says you are a thief. That is going to look great on a resume, isn't it? Why are you doing this? I asked. The question felt heavy in my mouth. We were sisters. We used to build forts in the living room with Aunt Nadine's quilts. Why? Mara sighed, picking a piece of lint off her sweater. You are just not cut out for this. Lila, the estate is complicated. There are debts you do not know about. There are complexities. I am trying to save the family from embarrassment. If you start digging around, making a mess, you are going to ruin everything Nadine built. What debts? I asked. Nadine had zero debt. She paid cash for everything. See? Mara smiled, a condescending tilt of her lips. You do not know anything. Grant explained the deal. Right? Just sign the management paper. I will call the police chief. I know him. We had dinner last week. And tell him it was a misunderstanding. I will say, I found the spare key and realized I was wrong. The report vanishes. You go back to your life. I handle the mess here. Everyone wins. I looked at her. I saw the fear behind the arrogance. It was small, buried deep, but it was there. She was too eager. She was pushing too hard. And if I do not sign? I asked. Mara's smile vanished. Her face went cold and flat. Then I hope you look good in a mugshot. Because I will testify that you took those keys while screaming at me, and that I was terrified for my safety, and Grant will back me up. Who are they going to believe? Lila? The sister who is a respected member of the community? Or the one who is unemployed and driving a rental car? I felt a chill go through me. She had planned this. She had scripted it. I am not signing. Mara, she laughed. It was a dry, sharp sound. You always were stubborn. Just remember, when the walls start closing in, I gave you an out. She turned and walked toward Grant's office, her heels clicking rhythmically on the hardwood floor. She did not look back. I pushed through the glass doors and into the cold mountain air. I walked to the rental car, got in, and locked the doors. I sat there for 5 minutes, just breathing, in, out, in, out. I needed to think. Grant was stonewalling me on the trust. Mara was blackmailing me. They were working together. That was obvious. But why? What was in that trust that was worth a felony false report? I pulled my phone out. I had written down the number for Hallowell Fiduciary Group the night before. I started the car and drove a few blocks away, parking in the lot of a grocery store. I did not want to be anywhere near Pellman's office for this call. I dialed the number. Hallowell Fiduciary Group. This is reception. I need to speak to a trust officer regarding the Nadine Coleman estate. I said. My voice sounded stronger than I felt. One moment, please. Music played. Classical, soothing. I watched a woman push a cart full of groceries to her car. Normal life. I wanted that normal life back so badly it made my chest ache. This is Tessa Vane. The voice was crisp, professional, guarded. Ms. Vane, my name is Lila Coleman. I am Nadine Coleman's niece. There was a pause. The sound of typing. Yes, Ms. Coleman. We have you on file. How can I help you? I am trying to get a copy of the trust agreement. I said. The attorney, Mr. Pellman, seems to have misplaced the attachment to the will. I need to know the terms of the trust. There was another pause. Longer this time. Ms. Coleman. I am looking at the file right now. We have already released the summary of assets and the management structure to the authorized representative. I did not receive it. I said, who is the authorized representative? According to our records, the authorization was signed by you. The world stopped. The grocery store parking lot, the blue sky, the white rental car, it all froze. Excuse me? I whispered. We received a notarized directive 3 weeks ago, just after your aunt's passing. Tessa Vane said. Her voice was cool, detached. It designates Mara Coleman as the primary point of contact and authorizes the consolidation of the trust assets into a holding entity for distribution. It was signed by Lila Coleman. I felt the blood drain from my face. I looked at my hands. They were shaking. Ms. Vane, I said, and I had to force the words out through a throat that felt like it was closing up. I did not sign that document. I have never seen that document. The silence on the other end was heavy. I am looking at the signature. Ms. Vane said, it appears to match the sample we have on file from when your aunt originally set up the beneficiary designations years ago. It is a forgery. I said, I am telling you, I did not sign it. Can you email it to me? Please, I need to see it. I cannot release documents to an unsecured email if there is a dispute regarding identity. Ms. Vane said. Her tone had shifted. She was no longer just professional. She was wary. Please, I begged. I am the beneficiary. If someone is impersonating me, you need to know. Verification. I need to answer security questions. She asked me my mother's maiden name, my first pet, the street I grew up on. I answered them all instantly. Okay, Tessa said. You answered correctly. But, look, Ms. Coleman, this is highly irregular. If you are saying you did not sign this, then we have a major compliance issue. I am saying exactly that. I heard her sigh. It was a small, human sound, breaking through the corporate veneer. I can't email the full document without a court order if the status is contested. She said, but I can describe the document to you. It is dated the 14th of last month. It is notarized by a, she paused, by a Janet Rusk, as in Pelman Rusk. I closed my eyes. They had done it in-house. Ms. Vane, I said, does it have a loop on the L? A big loop? Yes, she said. I do not loop my L's. I said, I never have. My aunt did. My sister mimics her writing, but I print my capitals. There was silence again. Then, Tessa spoke, her voice lower. Ms. Coleman, when this directive came in, I flagged it. The signature looked hesitant, different pressure points than the original on file. I raised it with our legal department. And I was told that Pelman Rusk had verified the identity in person and that we were to stand down. We were told not to obstruct the estate settlement. My hand gripped the phone so hard it hurt, so they pushed it through. I said, I cannot comment on that. Tessa said quickly, retreating back into corporate safety, but if you wish to challenge the authorization, you will need to file a petition with the probate court, and you will need to come here, in person, for a biometric identity verification. We are in Denver. I will be there. I said, thank you. Tessa, I hung up. I sat in the car, feeling sick. It was a quiet, gnawing nausea. Identity theft. It wasn't just about money. It was about someone wearing your face, using your name, stealing your voice. Mara hadn't just reported the car stolen. She had stolen me. She had signed my name to give herself power, and Pelman had facilitated it. I drove back to my apartment in Briar Glen on autopilot. The anger was there, burning hot, but under it was a profound sadness. My sister, my own sister. She must have practiced my signature. She must have sat at a table, maybe the kitchen table where we used to eat cereal, and practiced being me so she could rob me. When I got home, the apartment felt empty and cold. I locked the door and put the chain on. It felt flimsy. If they could forge my signature and weaponize the police, a door chain was nothing. I needed to feel close to Aunt Nadine. I needed to remember that someone in this family had actually loved me. I went to the closet and pulled down the old shoebox I had taken from Nadine's house the day after the funeral. Mara had been busy looking for jewelry. I had taken the letters. I hadn't looked through them yet. I hadn't had the heart. I sat on the floor and opened the lid. It smelled of lavender and dust. Inside were bundles of letters tied with ribbon. Letters from my mother, who died when I was 10. Letters from Nadine's husband, dead 20 years, and right on top, a plain white envelope. It didn't have a stamp. It just had my name, Lila, written in Nadine's spidery, elegant script. I picked it up. My hands were trembling again. I slid my finger under the flap and tore it open. There was a single sheet of lined notepaper inside. No date. My dearest Lila, I hope you never have to read this. I hope that when I go, things are simple and kind. But I know my family. I know the greed that sleeps in the blood. I have seen how Mara looks at things when she thinks no one is watching. I have tried to be fair, but fairness is not always enough. If things go wrong, if you feel unsafe, or if the numbers do not add up, do not trust the first lawyer. Grant is a weak man who likes comfortable things. He will bend with the wind. If you are reading this, the wind has blown the wrong way. Go to the storage unit. You know the one. Ask for the second envelope. It is not in the legal files. It is with the things that matter. Trust your gut. Lila, you are stronger than you know. Love, Aunt Nadine. I read the note 3 times. Ask for the second envelope. I didn't know what it meant. I didn't know what storage unit she was talking about. Nadine had a lot of clutter, but I didn't know she had a unit. But as I sat there, holding the paper that still held the faint indentation of her pen, I felt a spark ignite in the center of my chest. Nadine had known. She had predicted this. She hadn't left me defenseless. She had left me a map. Grant Pellman and Mara thought they were playing chess with a pawn. They thought they had removed me from the board, but they didn't know about the second envelope. I folded the note and tucked it into my bra, right against my skin. I stood up. I walked to the kitchen and made a pot of coffee. It was 4 p.m. I wasn't going to sleep tonight. I had to find that storage unit, and I had to find a lawyer who wasn't bought and paid for by my sister. The fear of the police was still there. The fear of Mara's threats was still there. But now, I had a secret of my own. I took a sip of the black coffee. It was bitter and hot. Do not trust the first lawyer. I wouldn't. I would burn his world down instead. But first, I had to find the second envelope. Finding the storage unit took 3 hours of digging through the cardboard box of Aunt Nadine's financial records. I sat on my living room floor, surrounded by piles of bank statements that smelled of dust and old perfume. Nadine was old-fashioned. She kept paper copies of everything. I traced the monthly withdrawals with my finger until I found a recurring payment of $150 to Cedar Vale Secure Storage. It started 5 years ago. It never missed a month. I checked the address online. It was on the far north side of Cedar Vale, away from the polished law offices and boutique shops, tucked into an industrial park near the rail yards. I drove the rental car there, the white Nissan feeling flimsy against the gusty wind coming off the mountains. My stomach was a knot of anxiety. I kept checking my rearview mirror, half expecting to see a patrol car or Mara's sleek SUV tailing me. Paranoia, I told myself, but after yesterday, paranoia felt like a survival skill. Cedar Vale Secure Storage was a fortress of corrugated metal and barbed wire. The office was a small concrete bunker at the front gate. I parked and walked in. A bell chimed above the door. Behind the counter sat a man who looked like he had been carved out of granite. He was older, maybe 60, with a thick gray mustache and eyes that had seen everything and found most of it unimpressive. He wore a name tag that said, Rex. "Help you?" he asked, not looking up from a crossword puzzle. "I'm looking for a unit rented by Nadine Coleman." I said, "I am her niece, Lila Coleman." Rex stopped writing. He slowly put the pen down and looked at me. His gaze was heavy, assessing. He didn't smile. "ID," he said. I handed him my driver's license. He held it up to the light, squinting, then looked back at my face. He studied me for a long, uncomfortable minute. "You look like her," he said finally. "Around the eyes. You knew my aunt?" "Nadine was a good woman," Rex said. "Smart. Didn't suffer fools." He handed my license back and tapped a few keys on his computer. "She left instructions," he said. "Strict ones. Unit 402. It is not a standard unit. It is a climate-controlled lockbox." He reached into a drawer and pulled out a heavy key ring. "She paid up through the end of the year," he said. "But there is a catch. The box requires 2 keys to open. We hold the master key. The second key, the renter's key, is kept in the safe here, labeled for the family representative." "Okay," I said. "I am the family representative." Rex leaned forward, resting his elbows on the counter. "Your sister was here," he said. My heart skipped a beat. "Mara?" "About a week ago," Rex said. "Came in storming like a wet cat. Said she was the executor. Said she had the right to access all estate property. Demanded I open the box." "What did you tell her?" I asked. "I told her the contract lists the authorized access person as Lila C." Rex said. "Not Mara. Not executor. Lila C. She screamed at me for 10 minutes. Threatened to sue me. Threatened to call the cops." I felt a cold shiver. Mara knew. She knew there was something here. What happened? I told her she could scream all she wanted, but unless she turned into Lila C., that box stays shut. She left, but she was not happy. She kicked the door on the way out. He stood up and grabbed a hat from a hook. "Come on, let us go see what Nadine was hiding." We walked through the rows of orange metal doors. The air inside the facility was cool and dry. We stopped at a small bank of lockers near the back. Rex found number 402. He inserted his key into the left lock. He pulled a small brass key from his pocket, the one from the safe, and inserted it into the right lock. "Turn on 3, he said. 1, 2, 3. We turned the keys simultaneously. The mechanism clicked. A solid, heavy sound. Rex swung the small door open. Inside, there was no gold, no jewelry, just a thick, padded envelope. He stepped back. "It is all yours. Kid," he said. I reached in and took the envelope. It was heavy. I traced the handwriting on the front. For Lila. "Do not open unless necessary." I looked at Rex. "Thank you," I said, "for not letting her in. Nadine brought me a pie every Christmas." Rex said, "Blueberry? Homemade." I do not break promises to women who bake like that. I sat in the rental car with the doors locked. I did not want to open the envelope there. I felt exposed. I drove to a public library in the next town over, found a quiet corner in the back, and sat down at a table. I tore the seal. Inside was a sheaf of papers and a silver flash drive. I pulled the papers out first. The header stopped my breath. Last Will and Testament of Nadine Coleman. Draft version B. It was dated 2 months before she died. I scanned the pages. It was different from the one Grant Pellman had read to us. In this version, the house wasn't sold. It was placed in a trust for me. The cash assets were divided, but not equally. 70% to the Lila Coleman Trust. 30% to Mara Coleman, distributed in monthly allowances over 10 years. I felt a wave of dizziness. This wasn't just a slight preference. This was a statement. Clipped to the back of the will was a notarized letter. I read it, my hands shaking. To the presiding judge or trustee. I, Nadine Coleman, being of sound mind, suspect that upon my death, efforts may be made to circumvent my wishes. I love my niece Mara, but she has become dependent on a lifestyle she cannot sustain. I have loaned her money 5 times in the last 4 years. She has repaid none of it. She has asked me to sign documents I did not understand. She has brought lawyers to my home without my invitation. This trust structure is not a punishment. It is a protection. It is designed to ensure the assets remain intact. However, I have included a bad actor clause. If any beneficiary is found to have committed fraud, forgery, or deceit during the probate process, their share of the estate is immediately forfeited and returned to the principal trust. I put the letter down. A test. Aunt Nadine hadn't just left me money. She had left a trap. She knew Mara would try something. She knew Mara wouldn't be able to help herself. She had set this up so that if Mara played fair, she would still get help, but if Mara tried to steal it, she would lose everything. I opened my laptop and plugged in the flash drive. A single video file appeared. I put in my earbuds and clicked play. Nadine's face filled the screen. She was sitting in her sunroom, wearing her favorite blue cardigan. She looked tired, her skin papery and pale, but her eyes were sharp. "Hello? Lila," she said. Hearing her voice, so clear and familiar, made tears prick my eyes. It was like she was in the room. "If you are watching this, it means the first will, the one Grant has, is being used to hurt you, or it means Mara has done something foolish." She took a sip of tea. Her hand trembled slightly. "I want you to know the truth. I did not trust Grant Pellman near the end. He and Mara, they have become close. He likes to feel important, and Mara knows how to make men feel important when she wants something." Nadine leaned closer to the camera. "The money is in the Hallowell Trust, but the access requires strict verification. I set it up that way. Mara knows the money is there, but she does not know the terms. She thinks if she can just control the estate, she can unlock it. She is desperate, Lila. She owes money to people who are not banks. I saw the messages on her phone once when she left it on the table." Nadine sighed. "I love her. I do. But I cannot let her destroy everything your grandfather built. So, this is the failsafe. If she has forged anything, if she has lied to the court, take this drive and the letter to the judge. It triggers the forfeiture clause." She paused, and her expression softened. "I am sorry to leave you with a fight. Lila, I know you just wanted peace, but you are the strong one. You always were. Do not let them bully you. Fight for what is yours. Fight for the truth." The screen went black. I sat there in the library. the silence of the room pressing against my ears. I felt sick, not triumph, sick. My sister was in debt to dangerous people? That explained the desperation. That explained the immediate escalation to police involvement. She wasn't just greedy. She was cornered. She needed the money now, and she needed me out of the way to get it. But the sickness was mixed with something else, a hard, cold resolve. Nadine had given me the weapon. She had given me the proof that the trust was designed to catch a thief. If Mara had forged my signature on that authorization at Hallowell, and I knew she had, then she had walked right into the trap. I packed the documents carefully back into the envelope. I had the evidence. Now I needed to figure out how to use it without getting destroyed in the process. I walked out of the library and turned my phone on. I had turned it off to avoid being tracked. A habit that felt like spy fiction, but was now my reality. It buzzed immediately. A voicemail. From my boss. David, Lila, please call me as soon as you get this. It is urgent. My stomach dropped. David was the regional manager at the logistics firm where I worked as a project coordinator. I had been there 2 years. It was a good job. It was the anchor of my new life. I dialed him back. Standing in the library parking lot. David? It is Lila. Lila, he said. His voice was stiff, uncomfortable. Is everything okay? I asked. Lila, we received an email this morning. It was sent to HR and copied to the entire executive team. My blood ran cold. What kind of email? It claims that you are currently under criminal investigation for grand theft auto. It included a case number from the Briar Glen Police Department. It also suggested that you might be using company resources for personal legal matters. I closed my eyes. Mara, David, that is a lie. I said, well, the investigation part. It is a misunderstanding. It is a family dispute over my aunt's estate. My sister filed a false report. I have not been charged. The problem is the optics. Lila. David said, we have government contracts. We require background clearance. If there is an active felony investigation. David, please, I am the victim here. I believe you. Lila, personally, I do. But HR is adamant. Until this is cleared up, until there is a formal dismissal of the investigation, we have to place you on administrative leave. Leave? I asked. Paid? Unpaid, he said softly. I am sorry. It is company policy for felony-level flags. Once you bring me paperwork showing it is closed, you are back in. But until then, I felt the ground slide out from under me, unpaid. I had savings for maybe 2 months of rent. After that? Nothing. David, I am sorry. Lila, please do not come into the office. We will mail your personal effects. The line clicked dead. I stood there, staring at the asphalt. The shame was a physical heat, burning my face. Mailed your personal effects. Like I was a criminal. Like I was trash. Mara hadn't just attacked my inheritance. She had attacked my livelihood. She was stripping me bare, removing every support system I had until I was desperate enough to sign whatever she put in front of me. It was surgical. It was cruel. And it made me want to burn the whole world down. But I remembered Nadine's voice. You are the strong one. I got back in the car. I wasn't going home to cry. I was going to the police station. I needed the paper trail. If Mara sent that email, or if Grant Pellman did, I needed to prove it. The Briar Glen police station was quiet in the mid-afternoon. The officer at the front desk was new. Not the sergeant from the night I was arrested. I need to request a copy of the police report filed against me. I said, case number 45992, and I want to request the body cam footage from the arrest. The officer handed me a form. Fill this out. $10 for the report, $50 for the footage processing. I filled it out. My pen scratching loudly in the quiet room. I paid with my credit card, praying it wouldn't be declined. The records clerk, a woman named Joni Spires, took the form. She was about my age. With glasses and a kind, tired face, she looked at the name on the form. Lila Coleman? She asked. Yes. You are the one from the highway stop yesterday? The 2 SUVs? I nodded. bracing myself for judgment. Joni looked around the room. The front desk officer was on the phone. She leaned over the counter, her voice dropping to a whisper. I processed that report this morning. She said, I looked at her. It was weird. She said, weird how? Usually, domestic stolen vehicle reports are messy, people yelling, barely making sense. This one, the narrative section was perfect, like grammatically perfect. It used terms like unauthorized conveyance and mental incapacitation regarding fiduciary duty. That sounds like a lawyer. I said, exactly. Joni said, and the other thing, usually these come in from a personal cell phone or a home landline. The digital stamp on the online filing, it came from a commercial IP address. Commercial? Yeah, an office building in Cedarvale. I recognized the ISP tag because my husband works IT over there. It was filed from the Phoenix Plaza building. My heart hammered. The Phoenix Plaza. That was where Pellman Rusk had their offices. So my sister didn't file it from home, I whispered. Joni nodded. Someone filed it for her, or with her. Look, I can't put that in the official release without a subpoena. But I thought you should know. It didn't sit right with me. The way they described you, it felt like they were building a resume for a crazy person, not reporting a crime. Thank you, Joni. I said, you have no idea how much that helps. She slid the printed report across the counter. Be careful, she said. Whoever wrote this knows the penal code better than most of our officers. I took the report and walked out to the car. I read the narrative. Joni was right. It was clinical. It was cold. The suspect, Lila Coleman, has exhibited increasing signs of paranoia and erratic behavior following the death of the decedent. On the morning of the incident, she absconded with the vehicle despite explicit instructions from the estate administrator. Absconded, decedent, explicit instructions. Mara didn't write this. Mara wrote texts with emojis and spelling errors. Grant Pellman wrote this. He had sat in his beige office, in his beige suit, and he had typed out a report that would get me arrested at gunpoint. He had used his legal knowledge not to defend a client, but to frame a beneficiary. He was helping her. He wasn't just a passive enabler. He was an active participant. Why? Money. It had to be. Nadine said Mara owed money to dangerous people. Maybe Pellman did too? Or maybe he just wanted a cut of the trust he was helping her steal. I looked at the report again. It was a weapon, but weapons could be turned around. They had filed a false report from a law office. That wasn't just a crime. It was malpractice. It was disbarment. It was the end of Grant Pellman's career if I could prove it. I started the car. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the parking lot. I felt exhausted, my bones aching with the stress of the last 24 hours. I had lost my car. I had lost my job. I had lost my sister. But I had the second envelope. I had the flash drive. And now, I had a witness in the records department who knew the report was bogus. I wasn't the victim anymore. I was the investigation. I drove toward home, but I took the long way, checking for tails. I wasn't going to let them catch me off guard again. Tomorrow, I would go on the offensive. Tomorrow, I would find a lawyer who could fight a shark like Pellman. I touched the envelope tucked inside my jacket. Ask for the second envelope. I had it, and God help them when I opened it in a courtroom. The Cedar County Probate Court was a building made of heavy gray stone that seemed designed to make you feel small. I stood at the clerk's window, my hands trembling slightly as I slid the petition across the polished wood counter. I had spent the entire night researching legal templates online, printing them out at the library because I no longer had access to my office printer. I am filing an emergency petition to freeze the assets of the Nadine Coleman estate, I said, and a request for an identity verification hearing regarding the Hallowell Trust authorization. The clerk, a woman with reading glasses perched on the end of her nose, stamped the documents with a heavy thud. $75 filing fee. She said, I paid it. It left me with less than $200 in my checking account. As I walked out of the courthouse, I felt a strange mixture of terror and relief. I had done it. I had officially challenged them. The clock was ticking now. But Grant Pellman did not wait for the clock. He moved with the speed of a man who knew the system better than I ever would. 2 days later, a courier arrived at my apartment. He handed me a thick envelope from Pelman Rusk. I opened it at my kitchen table. It was a motion to dismiss my petition, but it was more than that. It was a character assassination. Petitioner Lila Coleman has exhibited a pattern of erratic and unstable behavior, culminating in a felony-level traffic stop on the 4th of this month involving a stolen vehicle. The estate maintains that the petitioner's sudden interest in the administrative details is financially motivated and stems from a refusal to accept the decedent's wishes. We request the court deny the freeze on the grounds that it would cause undue harm to the necessary liquidation of assets for debt management. I read the words financially motivated and felt a bitter laugh bubble up in my throat. I was eating instant oatmeal for dinner because I was trying to save money for a lawyer. Mara was the one driving a Range Rover she couldn't afford, but on paper, in the black and white language of the law, I was the greedy, unstable sister. They were using the police report, the one they had manufactured, as the cornerstone of their argument. It was a closed loop of lies. That night, my phone rang at 2 a.m. I saw the name on the screen. Mara. I debated not answering. I watched the phone buzz on the nightstand, vibrating against the wood, but I needed to know where her head was. I needed to know if she was cracking. I picked it up. Hello? Mara? Lila? Her voice was small, trembling. It sounded like the voice of the little girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. I am scared. I sat up, pulling the blanket around me. The apartment was cold. Scared of what? Mara? I don't know who you are anymore, she whispered. The police called me again. They said you are trying to freeze everything. They said you are trying to sue Grant. I am not suing Grant. I am petitioning the court to stop a fraud. You are acting crazy. Lila. Her voice spiked, the fear turning sharp. Mom and Dad would be so ashamed of you, dragging our family through the mud like this. I am just trying to handle things, and you are destroying it. I listened to the emotional bait. It was designed to hook into my guilt, to pull me back into the role of the protective big sister. Fix it, Lila. Make it okay. I am not the one who forged a signature. Mara, I said. My voice was steady. It was the voice of a stranger. There was a silence on the line. A long, breathing silence. You think you are so smart, Mara hissed, the little girl voice gone entirely. You think because you were Nadine's favorite you can just walk in and take over? You have no idea what is going on. You have no idea what you are stepping into. Then tell me, I said, tell me about the debts. Tell me about the people you owe money to. She hung up. I stared at the phone. She hadn't denied the forgery. She hadn't denied the debts. She was terrified. And a terrified narcissist is the most dangerous thing on earth. I couldn't do this alone. I needed a lawyer who wasn't afraid of Grant Pelman. I went to see Mrs. Higgins the next morning. She was Aunt Nadine's neighbor for 30 years, a woman who spent her days gardening and watching the neighborhood like a hawk. Mrs. Higgins, I said, standing on her porch, Aunt Nadine told me once that you had a niece who was a pit bull in court. Mrs. Higgins wiped her hands on her apron. Sloane? Oh, she is not a pit bull. Honey, she is a velociraptor. Sloane Barrett's office was not in a Victorian mansion. It was in a strip mall next to a dry cleaner, with a sign that simply said, Barrett Quill. Inside, it was cluttered with stacks of files and smelled of strong coffee. Sloane Barrett herself was a woman in her 40s with short, spiky hair and glasses that hung on a chain around her neck. She listened to me for 20 minutes without interrupting. She read the police report. She looked at the forged authorization I had described. She watched the video of Aunt Nadine on my laptop. When the video ended, she leaned back in her chair and took off her glasses. Okay, she said. Okay? I asked. Okay. We have a case, she said. But I need you to understand something. Lila, this isn't going to be a polite legal disagreement. This is going to be a knife fight in a phone booth. She tapped the police report. Pelman has already painted you as the crazy sister. That is his narrative. Poor Mara. Trying to manage the estate while her unstable sister steals cars and files frivolous lawsuits. It is a good narrative. Judges like it because it is simple. So how do we fight it? We make it complicated. Sloan said, we prove fraud. But proving fraud in probate court means dissecting your family history. We are going to have to depose your sister. We are going to have to subpoena her financial records. We are going to have to show the court that she is not the responsible executor, but a desperate debtor. She looked me in the eye. Are you ready to do that? Are you ready to destroy your relationship with your sister permanently? Because once we pull that thread, there is no going back. I thought about the handcuffs. I thought about the job I had lost. I thought about Mara's voice on the phone, telling me I was unstable while she stole my identity. The relationship is already destroyed. I said, she destroyed it when she called the police. Sloan nodded. Good. Then let's go to work. We filed for the identity verification hearing immediately. Sloan knew the judge, Judge Holloway. She's tough, Sloan said, but she hates liars. The hearing was set for 3 days later. But first, I had to go to Hallowell Fiduciary Group for the in-person verification. I drove to Denver with Sloan. Having her in the passenger seat made me feel less like a fugitive and more like a plaintiff. We met Tessa Vane in a glass-walled conference room on the 20th floor. Tessa looked nervous. She kept glancing at Sloan. I am here to verify my identity, I said, and to state for the record that I did not sign the authorization dated last month. Tessa slid a biometric scanner across the table. I placed my thumb on it. It beeped green. She took my driver's license and scanned it. She took a photo of me. Identity verified. She said, typing into her laptop. Now, Sloan said, leaning forward, we need to talk about the authorization on file. The one with the forged signature. I cannot release internal. Tessa started. Cut the crap, Sloan said pleasantly. We are in litigation. I can subpoena you, or you can tell us now and save your firm the embarrassment of being named as a co-conspirator in a fraud case. Tessa swallowed. She looked at the door. I flagged it, she said quietly. When the document came in, I told my supervisor the signature looked off. The pressure points were wrong. It looked traced. And? I asked. And we got a call from Grant Pellman. He spoke to the senior VP. He said that you were difficult, that you had authorized it verbally but might be having memory issues. He said we needed to keep it simple and process the paperwork so the estate could be liquid to pay debts. Keep it simple. I repeated. My boss told me to let it go. Tessa said. She looked at me, her eyes apologetic. I am sorry. Where's the money? Sloan asked. The liquid assets that were in the trust. Tessa typed for a moment. The authorization allowed for the consolidation of assets, she said. About 60% of the cash holdings, roughly $400,000, was transferred out last week. Transferred where? I felt sick. $400,000. Gone. To a corporate entity, Tessa said. Northbridge Asset Transit, LLC. Northbridge Asset Transit? Sloan wrote the name down. Is that an estate account? It was presented as a temporary holding vehicle for tax purposes, Tessa said. Standard procedure. According to Mr. Pellman, we left the building. The wind in Denver was fierce, whipping my hair around my face. Northbridge Asset Transit, Sloan said, pulling out her phone. Let's see who owns you. She searched the Secretary of State database as we walked to the car. Here it is, she said. Registered agent. She stopped walking. What? I asked. The registered agent is a paralegal at Pellman Rusk, she said. But look at the principal address. She showed me the screen. The address was a P.O. box in a strip mall in Cedarvale. And look at the managers. She said, it wasn't Mara. It was a shell company. This isn't just Mara trying to pay off a credit card, Sloan said, her voice hard. This is money laundering. Pellman isn't just helping her. He is moving the money into a place where he can control it. This is organized legal theft. I felt a coldness settle in my gut. Aunt Nadine had been right. Do not trust the first lawyer. He was stealing the estate. He was using Mara as the face of the operation, the greedy sister to take the fall if it went wrong. But he was the one moving the pieces. We need to freeze that LLC. I said, we need a court order. Sloan said, And for that, we need the hearing, the morning of the hearing. The courthouse was buzzing. I saw Mara standing near the metal detectors. She was wearing a black suit, looking somber and respectable. Grant Pellman was next to her, whispering in her ear. When she saw me, she excused herself and walked over. She stopped 3 feet away. "You look tired." "Lila," she said. I looked at her. I didn't see the sister I loved anymore. I saw a stranger wearing her skin. "Save it, Mara. You always thought you were better than everyone, didn't you?" she hissed. "The perfect niece, the one who did everything right. Well, look at you now. You are suing your own family. I am suing a shell company." "Mara," I said quietly. "Northbridge Asset Transit." "Do you even know what that is?" Her eyes flickered. Just for a second, a tiny hesitation. "Of course I do," she said. "But it was too fast. It is for taxes." Grant explained it. "Did he explain that he controls it?" I asked. "Did he explain that the money isn't in your name?" "Shut up," she said. Her voice rose. "Just shut up. You are trying to confuse me." I saw the panic then. It was raw and terrifying. She didn't know. She had signed whatever he put in front of her because she was desperate for cash, and she thought he was saving her. She didn't realize she was the getaway driver for his bank robbery. Grant Pellman walked over, placing a hand on Mara's shoulder. "Lila," he said smoothly. "Ms. Barrett, we should probably save our arguments for the judge." I looked at him. "I know about the forgery, Grant, and I know about the LLC." His smile didn't waver, but his eyes went flat. "I am sure I do not know what you are talking about, Lila, but baseless accusations are actionable. You should be careful." We walked into the courtroom. The hearing was short. Sloan was magnificent. She didn't scream. She didn't wave her arms. She simply laid out the facts. "Your Honor, the petitioner did not sign the authorization. We have biometric verification from the fiduciary proving the signature is contested. We have testimony that the fiduciary was pressured by opposing counsel to ignore irregularities." Grant stood up. "Your Honor, this is absurd. Ms. Coleman is suffering from severe emotional distress. She has forgotten signing documents before." "The traffic stop." "Objection." Sloan said, "The traffic stop is irrelevant to the validity of a signature. And frankly, the police report regarding that stop is currently under review for irregularities as well." The judge, a stern woman with gray hair pulled back in a bun, looked over her glasses at Grant. "Mr. Pellman," she said, "did your office facilitate the transfer of assets to Northbridge Asset Transit, LLC? We assisted in the estate management." "Your Honor, it is a standard holding entity." "Is it?" the judge asked. She turned to me. "I am ordering an immediate freeze on the Hallowell Trust authorization. No further assets are to be moved. We will schedule a full evidentiary hearing for next week regarding the validity of the signature." It was a win. A small one, but a win. But as we were packing up our briefcases, Grant's assistant walked over and handed Sloan a document. "Service," she mumbled. Sloan looked at it and frowned. "What is it?" I asked. Sloan sighed. "It is a creditor claim," she said. "From who?" "From a medical collection agency. It claims Nadine had outstanding private medical debts, treatments she paid for in cash but apparently still owes on." "How much?" Sloan looked at the bottom line. $200,000. "It is a lie," I said. "Nadine had insurance. She was obsessive about her bills. It doesn't matter if it is a lie right now," Sloan said grimly. "If there is a valid creditor claim, the executor, Mara, is legally required to liquidate assets to pay it. They are trying to drain the estate before we can get to trial." I realized. Grant Pellman looked back at us from the doorway. He gave a small, polite nod. He wasn't done. He was just changing tactics. If he couldn't steal the money through the trust, he would steal it through fake debts. I looked at Mara. She was staring at the floor, twisting her ring. She looked trapped. "We have to stop this." I said to Sloan, "We will." Sloan said, "But Lila, if this debt claim is fake, they forged Nadine's signature too. They are doubling down." I touched the pocket of my blazer. where the flash drive was safely tucked away. "Let them double down." I said, "I have an ace," but as we walked out into the bright afternoon sun, I felt the weight of it. The lies were piling up like stones, and I was the only one standing underneath them, trying to keep the truth from being crushed. I went home to my empty apartment. I sat on the floor and looked at the wall. $200,000 in medical debt, a shell company, a forged signature, a false police report. It was a web, a complex, sticky web designed to trap me. But spiders can be squashed. I pulled out the police report again. I looked at the name of the officer who had arrested me. Officer Miller. I wondered if he knew he had been used. I wondered if he knew his gun had been drawn for a lie. I picked up my phone and dialed the non-emergency number for the Briar Glen Police. I would like to leave a message for Officer Miller. I said, "Tell him the woman he arrested on the highway has evidence that the report was fraudulent. Tell him I want to talk." It was a risk, but I was done playing defense. I hung up the phone and waited. The silence in the apartment was loud. Somewhere in Cedarvale, Mara was probably drinking wine and trying to convince herself she was the good guy. Grant Pellman was probably shredding documents. And I was sitting here, waiting for the war to start. My phone rang. "This is Miller. Officer." I said, "You pointed a gun at me 3 days ago." "Yeah, I remember." He said, his voice was guarded, "You were lied to." I said, "And I can prove it." "Meet me at the diner on 4th. He said, "Off duty. 1 hour." I grabbed my purse. The game was changing. The fluorescent lights of Sloan Barrett's conference room hummed with a low, electric buzz that seemed to vibrate in my teeth. The table was covered in stacks of paper, the results of the court-ordered audit of Northbridge Asset Transit, LLC. It looked like a city made of paper, towers of bank statements and transfer logs rising up from the mahogany surface. Sloan sat at the head of the table, her glasses pushed up onto her forehead. She looked tired, but her eyes were bright with the predatory focus of a hunter who has just found a fresh track. Grant Pellman sat across from us. He looked remarkably unbothered. He adjusted his silk tie and smiled, a tight, polite expression that did not reach his eyes. He had complied with the subpoena, handing over the documents with a flourish that suggested he had nothing to hide. It was unnerving. He was acting like a man who had already fixed the game. "We have reviewed the transaction history," Sloan said, her voice steady. Grant nodded. "As you can see, Ms. Barrett, everything is in order. The assets were moved into Northbridge for tax consolidation, as per the estate plan. My client, Mara Coleman, was acting under the broad powers granting her administrative control." Sloan picked up a single sheet of paper. "We are not talking about the transfers from last week. Grant, we are talking about the transfers from October." Grant's smile didn't falter, but his fingers tapped once on the table. "October?" he asked. "Nadine Coleman passed away in November. Any transfers in October would have been done by Nadine herself." "That is what I thought too," Sloan said, "until we looked at the signature cards." She slid the paper across the table. On October 14th, 3 investment accounts totaling $150,000 were retitled. They were moved from Nadine's personal portfolio into a joint tenancy with Mara Coleman. The authorization was signed using a power of attorney document. Grant shrugged. "A standard procedure. Nadine was getting older. She wanted Mara to help manage the funds. The power of attorney is dated October 14th. Sloan said, "It was notarized in your office." "Grant? By your receptionist." "Yes," Grant said. "Nadine came in, signed the papers, and we handled it. It was a Tuesday. I remember it clearly. I felt a cold prickle on the back of my neck." I looked at Grant, at the easy confidence of his lie. Sloan pulled another piece of paper from her folder. This one was a printout from a travel agency, stapled to a credit card statement. "That is interesting, Grant, because on October 14th, Nadine Coleman was in Sedona, Arizona. She was at a wellness retreat. Here is her flight receipt. Here is the charge for her hotel room. And here is a time-stamped photo she posted to her Facebook account of the Red Rocks at sunset." The room went silent. The hum of the lights seemed to get louder. Grant looked at the travel documents. He did not blanch. He did not gasp. He simply picked up the paper, studied it for a long moment, and then set it back down. Dates can be confusing, he said smoothly. Perhaps the document was signed before she left and dated administratively on the 14th. A clerical error. A clerical error, Sloane repeated. You notarized a signature for a woman who was 500 miles away. In the state of Colorado, that is not an error. Grant, that is fraud in the inducement. That is a felony. Grant leaned back. You are reaching. Sloane, you are trying to turn a paperwork mix-up into a conspiracy because your client is unhappy with her share. He looked at me then. His eyes were cold, devoid of any humanity. He looked at me like I was a bug he had forgotten to crush. Lila, he said, this is expensive. Audits, hearings, subpoenas. Is this really how you want to spend the little inheritance you might get? I looked at the documents. I saw the signature on the power of attorney. It was shaky. It looked like someone trying to copy Nadine's hand but hesitating on the loops. It wasn't a clerical error. It was theft. They had started stealing from her before she was even dead. I am not doing this for the money. Grant, I said, I am doing it because you thought I was stupid. Grant stood up. He buttoned his jacket. We will explain the discrepancy to the judge, he said. But be careful. Ms. Barrett, when you accuse a firm like mine of fraud, you better have more than a hotel receipt. You better be ready for the countersuit. He walked out. Sloane waited until the door clicked shut. Then she let out a long breath. He is lying, she said, obviously, but he isn't scared. I said, why isn't he scared? Because he thinks he can bury it. Sloane said, he thinks he can claim it was a mistake, or that Nadine pre-signed it. He is banking on the fact that probate courts hate to overturn legal documents unless the proof is overwhelming. Is this overwhelming? I asked. It is strong, Sloane said, but it is circumstantial. We need a witness. We need someone who saw Mara pressuring Nadine. We need a voice from inside the house. I thought about the handyman, Cal Morris. I hadn't called him yet. I had been too focused on the paperwork. I might have someone. I said, the next afternoon, I walked out of the library where I had been printing more emails for Sloane. The sky was gray, threatening snow. I pulled my coat tighter around me. Lila. I turned. Mara was standing near the bike rack. She looked smaller than she had in the courtroom. She was wearing a thick wool coat and a scarf wrapped high around her neck, hiding half her face. I didn't run. I didn't scream. I just stood there, gripping my folder of documents. What do you want? Mara? Can we talk? She asked. Just for a minute. No lawyers. Just us. There is no just us anymore. I said, you filed a police report saying I was crazy. I know. She said. She looked down at her boots. I know. Lila. And I am sorry. It got out of hand. Grant said we had to establish a baseline of behavior to protect the assets. I didn't think they would pull guns on you. You didn't think? I asked. You reported a stolen car. What did you think the police would do? Ask me nicely to return it? Lila. Please. She said. Her voice cracked. I am drowning here. She took a step closer. I stepped back. Grant says you are going to drag this out for years, she said. He says the legal fees will eat everything. There will be nothing left for either of us. So tell the truth, I said. Go to the judge and tell her the authorization was forged. Tell her about the power of attorney. I can't. Mara whispered, if I do that, I go to jail. Grant explained it. I am in too deep. So you want me to just let you rob me? No. Mara said, look, I can fix this. I have access to some cash. Not from the estate, but personal. I can give you $50,000. Right now. Cash. $50,000. I repeated. It is enough to start over. Mara said, her eyes pleading. You can move to Denver. Get a new apartment. We can drop the petitions. We can tell the court we settled. It saves everyone the humiliation. Please, Lila, I am offering you a way out. I looked at her. For a second, just a split second, I felt the pull. I was tired. I was so incredibly tired of waking up with a pit in my stomach. I missed my job. I missed the days when my biggest worry was whether I had bought enough milk. $50,000 would solve my immediate problems. It would end the war. I looked at Mara's face. I saw the fear there, but I also saw the calculation. She wasn't offering me money because she loved me. She was offering me hush money because she was terrified of what Sloan Barrett was finding. Then I remembered the gravel. I remembered the feeling of the officer's hand on my neck, forcing my head down. I remembered the humiliation of being handcuffed on the side of the road while cars drove past. Mara had done that. She had authorized that violence against me to protect a lie. I don't want your money. Mara, I said. Lila, be practical. No, I said. I want my name back. I want my reputation back. And I want you to stand in court and admit what you did. You are going to ruin us both. She hissed, the softness vanishing instantly. You are going to burn it all down out of spite. It is not spite, I said. It is justice. You are just like Nadine. She spat, always judging, always looking down your nose. Well, guess what? Nadine is dead, and you are going to be broke. She turned and marched away, her boots stomping on the pavement. I watched her go. My heart was pounding, but my hands were steady. I hadn't taken the bait. I hadn't signed the treaty. I called Sloan. She tried to settle. I said, good. Sloan said, that means they know the walls are closing in. The walls were closing in from two directions, while Sloan was hammering away at the financial records. I met Joni Spires at a diner on the edge of Briar Glen. It was late, and the diner was empty except for a truck driver eating pie in the corner. Joni looked nervous. She kept checking her phone. If I get caught doing this, I lose my pension, she said. You won't get caught. I promised. I just need to know what you found. Joni slid a manila envelope across the table. I pulled the metadata logs for the online police report. She said, the one Mara filed. And? Like I told you, it came from the Phoenix Plaza building in Cedarvale. But I dug a little deeper. The ISP log shows the specific router it originated from. She tapped a line of code on the paper. It didn't just come from the building. Lila, it came from the secure internal network of Pellman and Rusk. Specifically, from a terminal assigned to a user named G_Pellman. Grant Pellman filed the report himself. He didn't just help her write it, Joni said. He hit submit. He logged in with his credentials, impersonated your sister, and filed a false felony report against you. My hands shook as I held the paper. This was it. This was the smoking gun that didn't just prove fraud. It proved criminal conspiracy. Grant Pellman, an officer of the court, had used the police force as his personal hit squad. Can I use this? I asked. Not officially, Joni said. Not without a subpoena for the ISP records. But if your lawyer knows exactly what to ask for, if she subpoenas the router logs for that specific date and time, they won't be able to hide it. Thank you. Joni, I said, you take him down, she said fiercely. I have seen guys like him my whole career. They think the law is a toy they can play with. Show him it isn't. The day of the evidentiary hearing. The courtroom felt different. The air was heavier. The judge, Judge Holloway, looked less patient than she had the week before. She had read the briefs. She had seen the audit. Grant Pellman was still smiling, but there was a sheen of sweat on his forehead that hadn't been there before. Mara sat next to him, staring straight ahead. Her hands gripping her purse so tightly, her knuckles were white. Sloan stood up. Your Honor, we have new evidence to present regarding the pattern of undue influence and coercion exerted upon the decedent. Nadine Coleman. Call your witness, the judge said. We call Calvin Morris. The doors at the back of the courtroom opened. Cal walked in. He was wearing a flannel shirt and clean jeans, holding a battered baseball cap in his hands. He looked out of place among the suits and the polished wood, but he walked with the steady, rolling gait of a man who spent his life on ladders. He took the stand. He swore to tell the truth. Mr. Morris, Sloan said, how did you know Nadine Coleman? I was her handyman for 12 years, Cal said. His voice was gravelly and deep. Fixed her roof, mowed the lawn, plowed the snow. I was there too. 3 times a week. Did you see Mara Coleman at the house often? Not until the end, Cal said. He looked at Mara. She didn't come around much when Nadine was healthy. But the last month? She was there every day. Can you describe those visits? Cal pulled a small spiral notebook from his pocket. I keep logs, he said, for my hours. But I write down other things too, just so I remember. He opened the notebook. October 10th. Mara here again, yelling in the kitchen. Nadine crying. I heard Mara say, "Just sign the damn paper, Aunt Nadine. I need it." October 12th. Mara back, brought a man in a suit. They were in the study for an hour. Nadine looked like a ghost when they left. She told me, "Cal, if they come back when I'm sleeping, you wake me up." Mara stood up. "He is lying," she shouted, her voice shrill and sudden in the quiet room. "I never yelled at her. I was taking care of her." "Sit down, Ms. Coleman," the judge snapped. Mara sank back into her seat, but her face was flushed red. She began to whisper furiously to Grant. "Mr. Morris," Sloane continued, "did Nadine ever speak to you about her finances?" "She did." Cal said, "About a week before she died, she gave me an envelope of cash. $500. She said, 'Cal, keep this safe. If Mara finds it, she will take it.' She said Mara was in trouble. Said she owed money to bad people." "Objection!" Grant shouted. "Hearsay. It goes to state of mind." "Your Honor," Sloane argued. Overruled. The judge said, "The witness may continue." Cal looked at me. He gave me a small, sad nod. Nadine was scared. He said, "She wasn't scared of dying. She was scared of what her niece was going to do to her legacy. She told me, 'Cal, she is going to pick the bones clean.'" The courtroom was silent. I looked at Mara. She was shaking her head, over and over, a jerky, spasmodic motion. She looked like she was trying to shake the words out of the air. Sloane thanked Cal, and he stepped down. Grant stood up to cross-examine, but he looked distracted. He asked a few questions about Cal's employment, trying to paint him as a disgruntled employee. But Cal just answered with simple, honest facts. Grant gave up after 5 minutes. He knew he wasn't making a dent. "Your Honor," Sloane said, "we have one final piece of evidence." She pulled the flash drive from her pocket, the one from the second envelope. "This is a video statement recorded by Nadine Coleman in September, 2 months before her death. It was verified by digital forensics as authentic and unaltered." Grant stood up. "We object to the introduction of this video. We have not had time to review it. You received a copy 48 hours ago." "Mr. Pellman," the judge said, "sit down." Sloane plugged the drive into the court's AV system. The large screen on the wall flickered to life. Nadine appeared. She was larger than life, her blue eyes piercing through the pixelated screen. "Hello, Lila." The video, Nadine said. "I saw Mara flinch. It was like she had been slapped." The video played. Nadine talked about the loans. She talked about the pressure. She talked about Grant Pellman by name. "I do not trust Grant." Nadine's voice filled the room. "He is hungry. He looks at my accounts like they are his own." I watched Grant. He was staring at the screen. His jaw set so hard, a muscle was jumping in his cheek. He wasn't looking at Nadine. He was looking at the judge. He was calculating the damage. "If you are watching this, it means they have tried to bypass the trust." Nadine said, "It means they have forged documents, because I told Hallowell explicitly, no access without Lila present." The video ended. The screen went black. For 10 seconds, nobody moved. The silence was absolute. It was the silence of a truth so heavy it crushed all the arguments that had come before it. Then Mara spoke. She didn't mean it. She whispered. The room was so quiet everyone heard her. She was confused. She was on medication. "Ms. Coleman," the judge said. Her voice was ice. "You will remain silent." The judge turned her attention to Grant Pellman. She looked at him over the top of her glasses, and the look was terrifying. It wasn't the look of a judge annoyed by a procedural error. It was the look of a judge who realizes a crime has been committed in her courtroom. "Mr. Pellman," the judge said, This court is deeply reviewing the evidence regarding the power of attorney dated October 14th. The discrepancy between your notary log and the decedent's travel records is alarming. Grant stood up. He smoothed his tie, but his hands were trembling. We can explain that. Your Honor, as I said, it was a clerical matter. The judge did not blink. Furthermore, the testimony regarding the filing of the police report from your firm's IP address, which Ms. Barrett has indicated she intends to subpoena, raises questions that go well beyond probate law. She stacked her papers. I am scheduling final arguments for tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., but I am also issuing a referral to the Cedar County Financial Crimes Unit. I am forwarding the audit, the notary logs, and a transcript of today's testimony to the district attorney's office for review. She banged her gavel. It sounded like a gunshot. Court is adjourned. The room erupted into movement. The bailiff moved toward the door. Sloan turned to me and squeezed my arm. We got him, she whispered. The DA referral is the nail in the coffin. I looked across the aisle. Mara was sitting frozen in her chair. She looked like a statue of shock. She hadn't moved since the judge mentioned financial crimes. Grant Pellman was packing his briefcase. He moved quickly, jamming papers inside without organizing them. He looked like a man trying to leave a burning building before the roof collapsed. He walked toward the aisle. He had to pass me to get to the door. He stopped. He leaned in close. I could smell his cologne, expensive and cloying, masking the scent of sweat. You can still make this painless. Lila, he whispered. His voice was a hiss. Drop the petition. Take the settlement. If the DA gets involved, Mara goes to prison. Do you really want to be the one who sends your sister to a cage? I looked at him. I looked right into his pale, watery eyes. I saw the fear there. He wasn't worried about Mara. He was worried about himself. He was worried about the IP logs. He was worried about the fake notary seal. He was worried about prison. I didn't whisper. I spoke clearly, so Sloan could hear, so the bailiff could hear. If she goes to a cage, Grant, it is because you built it for her. He flinched. He pulled back, sneering, and turned to walk away. I watched him go. Sloan was packing up her files. He is terrified, she said. He just threatened you in open court. That is a desperation move. What happens now? I asked. Now we finish it. Sloan said, tomorrow, we ask for the forfeiture. We ask for everything. And we watch them turn on each other. I looked back at Mara. She was finally standing up. She looked at me across the empty seats. Her face was streaked with tears. She mouthed something. Help me. I felt a crack in my heart. She was my sister. But then I remembered the police report. Suspect is unstable. Mental spiral. She hadn't helped me when I was on the side of the road. She had handed me to the wolves. I turned my back on her and walked out of the courtroom. I walked into the bright, cold afternoon. I felt lighter than I had in weeks. The truth was out. The mechanism Nadine had built was working. The gears were grinding Grant Pellman and Mara into dust. But as I walked to my car, I felt a strange vibration in my pocket. Not my phone. I reached in. It was the other key. The key to the storage unit lockbox. Rex had given it to me. It requires 2 keys. I had emptied the box. I had the will, the letter, the flash drive. But something nagged at me. Nadine was meticulous. Why did she have a lockbox that required 2 keys if she was going to leave the renter's key in the safe for me? Ask for the second envelope. I had found the envelope. But was there something else? I got in my car. I sat there, gripping the steering wheel. The judge had referred the case to financial crimes. It was effectively over. So why did I feel like the other shoe hadn't dropped yet? Grant's whisper echoed in my ear. You can still make this painless. It sounded less like a threat and more like a plea. He was afraid of something bigger than a forged signature. I started the engine. I wasn't going home. I was going back to the storage unit. I needed to see the box again. I needed to see if I had missed something in the dark corners of Unit 402. Because if Grant Pellman was that scared, there was a reason, and I needed to find it before tomorrow morning. My alarm did not go off on the morning of the final hearing. It did not have to. I had been staring at the ceiling since 4 in the morning, watching the gray light of dawn slowly bleed into the room. When I finally rolled over to check my phone, the screen lit up with a terrifying wall of notifications. 32 missed calls, 14 text messages, all from Sloan Barrett. I sat up, my heart instantly hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I dialed her back, my fingers clumsy. "Lila, get dressed." Sloan said the moment she picked up. "Do not speak. Just listen. Mara has gone nuclear." "What happened?" I asked. Rushing to the closet, she filed an emergency petition in Boulder County at 2 this morning. Sloan said. Her voice was tight, clipped, the sound of a general managing a disaster. "She is claiming Judge Holloway is biased. She is claiming the Briar Glen Police Department is conspiring with you. She is asking for an immediate stay on all proceedings in Cedar County and a transfer of venue." "Can she do that?" I asked, pulling on my blouse with trembling hands. "She can try," Sloan said. "It is a desperation move. Judge shopping. It usually fails, but it creates chaos. She is trying to muddy the water so much that no one can see the bottom. But here's the problem. Lila, the press picked it up." "The press?" "Lila, check the news." I put her on speaker and opened the local news app. There, on the front page, was a photo of me. It was a mugshot from the day I was arrested, one I did not even know they had released. Next to it was a photo of Mara, looking glamorous and tearful at a charity gala. "Sisters at war. Inheritance battle explodes with allegations of police corruption and mental instability." The article detailed the guns-drawn traffic stop. It quoted an anonymous family friend, saying that I had been spiraling for months and that Mara was fighting to save her sister from herself. I felt the blood drain from my face. "They are spinning it," I whispered. "They are winning the PR war before we even get to court." "Forget the PR war," Sloan snapped. "We have to get to the courthouse. If we are late, Pellman will argue we are defaulting. I will be outside your building in 10 minutes. Be ready." I hung up. I stood in the center of my living room, feeling the weight of the moment. This was it. Today was the day I either got my life back or lost everything to a narrative written by a liar in a beige suit. I went to the bathroom and splashed cold water on my face. I looked at myself in the mirror. I looked tired. I looked like a woman who had been hunted. I am not unstable. I told my reflection. I am angry. When I walked out the front door of my apartment building, the flashbulbs blinded me. I had expected maybe one reporter. There were a dozen. A van with a satellite dish was parked on the curb. Microphones were thrust in my face like spears. "Lila, did you steal the car? Lila, is it true you threatened your sister? Ms. Coleman, do you have a comment on the allegations of mental illness?" I kept my head down. I felt a hand grip my elbow. It was Sloan. She was wearing a suit that looked like armor, sharp and black. She steered me through the crowd, her body acting as a shield. No comment. She barked at a man with a camera. "Move back." We got into her car and she locked the doors. The silence inside was sudden and jarring. "Do not look at them," Sloan said, putting the car in gear. "They are noise. That is all. Pellman leaked the story to rattle you. He wants you walking into that courtroom looking guilty and scared." "He is good at this," I said, watching the reporters shrink in the rearview mirror. "He is dirty." Sloan corrected. "There is a difference, and dirty lawyers make mistakes because they get arrogant." The drive to the courthouse was a blur of gray highway and adrenaline. When we arrived, the scene was the same. More reporters, more shouting. I walked through them with my eyes fixed on the revolving doors, pretending I was underwater, pretending I couldn't hear the questions that questioned my sanity. Inside, the courtroom was packed. People from town, curiosity seekers, maybe even creditors Mara owed money to. They were all there. It felt less like a legal proceeding and more like a gladiatorial arena. Mara was already seated. She looked impeccable in a navy dress, her hair perfectly coiffed, but her hands were shaking. She was twisting a tissue in her lap, over and over, shredding it into lint, Grant Pellman stood next to her. He looked energized. He was talking to his paralegal, gesturing with a pen, looking like a man who had just pulled an ace from his sleeve. Judge Holloway entered. The room stood. She did not look happy. She looked like a woman whose patience had been snapped in half. "Be seated," she said. She looked at Grant. "Mr. Pellman," she said, "my clerk informs me that you filed a petition in Boulder County this morning alleging bias in this court. We felt it was necessary to preserve my client's rights." "Your Honor," Grant said smoothly, "given the hostility we have encountered here." The judge narrowed her eyes. "Hostility? Mr. Pellman? Or accountability? You attempted to circumvent my jurisdiction at 2 a.m. Boulder has already kicked it back to me. Your request for a transfer is denied. Now, do you have any actual evidence to present? Or are we done here?" Grant smiled. It was a shark's smile. "We do. Your Honor, in light of the conflicting claims regarding the will, my client has located a document that we believe resolves the matter entirely." He picked up a single sheet of paper from his table. "This is a codicil to the last will and testament of Nadine Coleman. It is dated November 2nd, 4 days before her death." My stomach dropped. A codicil, an amendment. Grant walked to the bench and handed it to the judge, then handed a copy to Sloane. Sloane snatched it. I leaned over to read it. "I, Nadine Coleman, being of sound mind, do hereby amend my will. Due to the increasing instability and hostility of my niece, Lila Coleman, I hereby revoke her status as a beneficiary. I leave the entirety of my estate to Mara Coleman, with the hope that she can provide the care Lila needs." It was signed Nadine Coleman. "This changes everything," Grant said. Turning to the gallery, Nadine knew. She knew Lila was unwell. She wrote this to protect the family. I felt a scream rising in my throat. It was a lie. A monstrous, perfect lie. Aunt Nadine had been in the hospital on November 2nd. She could barely hold a spoon, let alone write a legal amendment. Sloane stood up. She did not look rattled. She looked furious. "Your Honor," she said, "this document is a forgery. That is a grave accusation." Grant said, "It is notarized." Sloane flipped to the second page. "By a notary named Sarah Jenkins." Sloane read, "We have an affidavit from Sarah Jenkins." Grant said, waving another paper, "She attests to witnessing the signature." Sloane looked at the judge. "Your Honor, we anticipated Mr. Pellman might produce new documents. That is why we had a rush forensic analysis done on the ink of the previous documents he submitted. But regarding this specific document, Sarah Jenkins does not exist." The room went silent. "Excuse me?" the judge asked. "We ran a background check on the notary commission number listed on this codicil." Sloane said, "It belongs to a man named Arthur Higgins, who died in 1998. There is no Sarah Jenkins registered as a notary in the state of Colorado." Grant froze. His hand hovered in the air, halfway to a gesture he never completed. "Furthermore," Sloane continued, her voice rising, "if the court permits, we can submit this document for electrostatic testing immediately, but I suspect we will find what we found on the authorization form, that the signature was lifted from a birthday card or a check and printed onto the paper." The judge looked at the document. She looked at the seal. She looked at Grant Pellman. "Mr. Pellman," the judge said, her voice dangerously quiet, "did you verify this notary?" My client provided the document. Grant stammered, "I assumed." "You assumed?" the judge shouted. "You filed a document in my court that disinherits a rightful heir based on a notary seal from a dead man?" "It must be a mistake," Grant said, sweat breaking out on his forehead. "Mara gave it to me this morning. She said she found it in Nadine's Bible." He threw her under the bus. In 1 second, he abandoned her. The judge turned to Mara. "Ms. Coleman, stand up." Mara stood. She was trembling so hard the table shook. "Did you forge this document?" the judge asked. "No," Mara cried. "I found it. I swear." The judge stared at her. "If I send this to the lab, and they find printer toner under that ink, I will have you taken into custody right here. Do you understand me?" Mara looked at Grant. Grant looked away. Mara sobbed. "Sit down," the judge ordered. She turned to the court officer. "Call the next witness." Sloane looked at me. "We have him," she whispered. "He just exposed himself." We called Tessa Vane back to the stand. Tessa looked even more nervous than before. She kept glancing at Grant Pellman, who was now furiously texting on his phone. "Ms. Vane," Sloane said, "you testified previously that you were pressured to accept the forged authorization. Who pressured you?" Tessa took a sip of water. "I was contacted by an outside counsel representing the estate," she said. "State the name for the record." "It was Mr. Pellman," she said quietly. "He told me that if Hallowell did not release the funds, he would sue us for breach of fiduciary duty. He said he had a friendly judge who would hold us in contempt." The judge's head snapped up. "A friendly judge?" she repeated. Tessa nodded. "He said he had influence in Cedar County. He said it would be easier to just process the paperwork." The judge looked at Grant. If looks could kill, Grant Pellman would have been ash on the floor. "Lila Coleman to the stand," Sloane said. I walked to the witness box. My legs felt heavy, but my head was clear. I swore to tell the truth. "Lila," Sloane said, "tell the court what happened on the afternoon of the 4th. I took a breath. I looked at the gallery. I saw the reporters scribbling in their notebooks. I was driving my aunt's car. I said, "I had a letter of permission. I was pulled over." I described the lights, the megaphone, the sight of the officer crouching behind his door. I was terrified. I said, not just because of the guns, but because I knew I hadn't done anything wrong. I knew someone had set me up. I looked at Mara. She was crying silently, her mascara running down her cheeks. "My sister filed that report." I said, "She told them I was crazy. She told them I was a danger. She did it because she wanted to scare me away from the estate." I paused. "I do not think my sister is evil," I said. "I think she's desperate, and I think she met a lawyer who told her that she could have everything if she just got rid of me. They took my reputation. They took my job. They tried to take my freedom. It wasn't an accident. It was a deliberate, calculated attempt to erase me." I stepped down. Grant Pellman did not cross-examine me. He sat staring at his table, defeated. But Mara stood up. "I want to say something," she said. Grant grabbed her arm. "Sit down." "Mara, no." She yanked her arm away. "I need to explain." The judge looked at her. "Make it brief, Miss Coleman, and be very careful." Mara walked to the podium. She gripped the sides of it. She looked at me. "I didn't want you to get hurt." "Lila," she said, "I just wanted the money released. I have debts. You don't know what they are like. They call me. They threaten me." She looked at the judge. "But I didn't forge the will. I didn't. Nadine told me about the Hallowell money. She told me about the test." The room went still. "What test?" the judge asked. "The test in the lockbox," Mara shouted. "She told me that if I was a good executor, I would get the bonus. She said it was in the red ledger in the lockbox. I knew about it." I froze. Sloane stood up slowly. "Your Honor," she said, "the details regarding the test, specifically the forfeiture clause, were contained in a sealed letter found in the lockbox. That letter has never been entered into open court evidence. It was submitted to Your Honor in camera, under seal." She pointed at Mara. The only way Mara Coleman could know about the test or the contents of that lockbox is if she broke into it, or if she accessed the materials before the lockbox was officially secured. Mara's eyes went wide. She covered her mouth with her hand. She stammered. "You just admitted to accessing the secured estate property you claimed you couldn't open." Sloane said, "You knew about the forfeiture clause. That is why you tried to frame Lila. You knew that if you were caught stealing, you would lose everything. So you tried to make Lila the thief." Mara looked around the room. She looked for Grant, but he had moved his chair a few inches away from her. She was alone. "I didn't break in," she whispered. I found a key in Nadine's desk. The admission hung in the air. She had bypassed the security. She had read the warning, and she had proceeded with the fraud anyway. The judge slammed her hand on the bench. "That is enough." She stood up, her robes swirling around her. "I have heard enough. The evidence of fraud, forgery, and malicious prosecution is overwhelming. She pointed a finger at Grant Pellman. Mr. Pellman, you are hereby removed as counsel for this estate. I am referring you immediately to the State Bar Association for disbarment proceedings. I am also finding you in direct contempt of court for the submission of the fraudulent codicil. Bailiffs, take Mr. Pellman into custody. A gasp went through the courtroom. 2 officers moved toward Grant. He stood up, protesting, but they grabbed his arms. And as for you, Ms. Coleman, the judge said, turning to Mara, I am freezing every asset you own. I am freezing the estate. I am referring this entire matter to the district attorney for charges of grand theft, forgery, and filing a false police report. Mara collapsed into her chair, sobbing loudly. The judge looked at me. Her expression softened. Ms. Coleman, I am sorry for what you have endured. I am dismissing the petition against you with prejudice. I am ordering the immediate release of your vehicle and the restoration of your legal standing. Thank you, Your Honor, I whispered. The judge picked up her gavel to dismiss the court. Wait. The voice came from the back of the room. A court officer was running down the aisle, holding a large, thick yellow envelope. Your Honor, delivery for the court. The judge paused. What is this? It was delivered by courier just now, the officer said, breathless. It is marked, to be opened only upon the conclusion of the Coleman estate hearing. The judge took the envelope. She looked at the return address. She frowned. It is from a law firm in Switzerland, she said. The room was deadly silent. Even Mara stopped crying. Switzerland? Aunt Nadine had never been to Switzerland. The judge tore open the seal. She pulled out a document bound in blue ribbon. She put on her glasses and began to read. As she read, her eyebrows went up. She turned the page. She read again. She looked up at me, then at Mara, then back at the document. This is unexpected, she said. What is it, Your Honor? Sloane asked. The judge looked at the gallery. This is a directive from Nadine Coleman, executed 3 years ago and held in escrow by an international firm. It contains instructions that supersede the will, the trust, and any other document we have discussed today. She looked at me. It appears, Ms. Coleman, that your aunt anticipated exactly this scenario. She held up the paper. She writes, If the court has reached a verdict of fraud regarding my niece Mara, and if my niece Lila has stood her ground without resorting to the same deceit, then the third envelope shall be opened. The third envelope? I thought. There was a third one? The judge looked at the document again. It says here that the majority of the estate, the house, the accounts, the investments, were never in the Hallowell Trust. They were moved offshore years ago. Moved? I asked. The Hallowell Trust was a decoy. The judge said, it contained only enough money to tempt a thief. The real estate, the judge paused, reading the number, is valued at $4 million. $4 million? I grabbed the table to steady myself. And the beneficiary? Sloane asked. The judge looked at me. To my niece Lila, who I knew would pass the test, and to my niece Mara. The judge looked at Mara, who was staring up with red, swollen eyes. I leave the sum of $1 and the advice to earn her own way, as I should have made her do years ago. The courtroom erupted. Reporters were shouting. Grant Pellman was being dragged out the side door in handcuffs. Mara was screaming, a high, thin sound of total ruin. But the judge wasn't done. There is one more thing, the judge said, raising her voice over the chaos. She holds up a smaller envelope that had been inside the yellow one. It says here, to be read only if Lila forgives her sister. The judge looked at me. The room fell silent again. Ms. Coleman, the judge said, your sister is facing prison. She is facing ruin. This document, I do not know what is in it, but your aunt left the choice to you. Do you wish to open it? Or do you wish to let the judgment stand as it is? I looked at Mara. She wasn't arrogant anymore. She wasn't the girl with the perfect hair. She was a broken, sobbing mess, terrified of the cage Grant Pellman had built for her. I looked at the envelope in the judge's hand. Nadine had left me one last test. The money was mine. The victory was mine. But the mercy? That was the only thing I had left to give. I looked at Sloane. She gave me a small nod. It is your choice. I thought about the gun. I thought about the lies. I thought about the mental instability headlines. But I also thought about the forts we built in the living room. I thought about the sister I had before the money ruined her. I took a step forward. Your Honor, I said. The judge waited. I looked at the envelope, then at Mara, then back at the judge. The weight of the decision pressed down on me, heavy and absolute. I knew that whatever I said next would define the rest of my life. I took a deep breath. Open it, I said. The judge slipped her finger under the flap. The sound of tearing paper was the only sound in the world. Thank you for listening to Police Pulled Me Over with Guns Drawn. My sister reported my car stolen to steal my inheritance. This story explored the dark side of family greed and the incredible foresight of a woman who knew exactly who her nieces were. I would love to hear your thoughts on Lila's final decision. Did she make the right choice to open that last envelope, or should she have let Mara face the full consequences without that final mystery? And where are you listening from today? We have a community of listeners from all over the world, and I read every single comment. Please make sure to subscribe to Revenge Stories so you do not miss the next episode, where we will dive into another tale of betrayal and justice. Until then, stay safe and watch out for the second envelope.